Kamagala Hana, Kamagala Kasuda, Angwan, Tingunanganway, Unangana Sakta Kuyach, Amakacha Sakta Illarion Merculieff. I said, good afternoon. It's afternoon here now, and I'm pleased to be with you. I said, the afternoon tastes good. This is the way we greet each other every day. And I said, Ang Wan, which means hello, my other self. In our people's way, we look at each other as our other self. And I said, I am Unangin, which in Western ways is called Aleut. And I come from the people of the sea line, the stellar sea line. And my people have been out in the Bering Sea for over 10,000 years, and we're still there. And I am going to talk about Alaska and worldwide, really. I've had a lot of experience with what people call climate change, indigenous people call climate crisis. And for example, I chaired the North American gathering of indigenous peoples on the healing of Mother Earth. I chaired the Indigenous Knowledge Sessions for the Global Summit of Indigenous Peoples on Climate Change. And there were Indigenous representatives from 80 nations in our sessions. And I also was the scientific chair for Snow Change, which is a consortium of 8 Arctic countries, indigenous people from 8 Arctic countries. So, and of course I've spoken a lot on climate crisis here in Alaska. Just to give you an example, in Alaska, everything is changing quite dramatically. Migratory routes of birds are changing. Number of species are declining very rapidly. For example, when I was in my hometown of St. Paul Island in the middle of the Bering Sea, we had about 1.2 million fur seals and 2.5 million seabirds, 1,000 reindeer, and 500 Unangan people. And on an island that's 12 miles long and 5 miles wide. And when I was there last as a community leader, that was about 1995. And when I left there, there were 1.2 million fur seals, and now there are about 400,000. It's gone down quite dramatically. Stellar sea lions, which are central to our culture, have declined 80% in the last 30 years. And all these species of birds are declining quite dramatically. We used to be maybe number 25 in bird colonies in North America. Now we were in the top 5 of the top bird colonies in North America, and now we're about 25 or so. So they're quite declining, and the elders that I work with here in Alaska, I mean, they have seen dramatic changes to everything. Sea ice conditions are getting far less. The sea ice is coming down later and leaving earlier, and it's getting thinner. I was up in a meeting in Chalkitsik in interior Alaska when the state of Alaska was meeting with the tribal chiefs in that area to explain why they were cutting down subsistence take of moose. And as the tribal leaders spoke, they said that water levels are going down, and when water levels go down, they affect the forage that moose eat. And the reason the water levels are going down is because beaver are proliferating in all the rivers in southern Alaska. And beaver are even seen above the Arctic Circle now, following their food source. and salmon. We have 5 species of salmon in Alaska, and all these species are having trouble. And my people on St. Paul Island, we fish for halibut for food and as a center of our economy, and the halibut are disappearing. Crab have virtually disappeared into nothing. And one person, the environmental officer from South Central Alaska, in Puget Sound, said that they got no ducks this year because the migratory flyway has changed so dramatically. So there's nothing that these communities are facing that doesn't hit some kind of extreme. We have now 5 communities in Alaska that have to move because of storm-driven waves, and permafrost is getting thinner, which means that the infrastructure that is like pipelines, etc., are cracking and breaking and all that kind of thing. Runways are having trouble. There is no aspect of this climate crisis that we don't experience, and it's getting worse. The elders here are talking about having 2 winters in a year. That may seem against the logic when things are warming up, but in 2 regions of Alaska, the elders see 2 winters coming. And so instead of the normal winter season, we will have that, and we will have maybe winter in the summertime now. So it's quite dramatic. Now, I just asked for a meeting with world elders in November of last year to go to Kauai to answer 2 questions. One, what is the state of the world as they see it now? And 2, what do they feel we should do about it? And part of what the elders have said is that the human race is focused on a myriad of issues that we have created on our own, be it refugees, wars, social injustices, political corruption, damage to Mother Earth. And they say, well, look, there are maybe thousands of more environmental organizations today in the world compared to 30 years ago, but yet Mother Earth's life support systems are going to the edge. And they say that this will continue unless we change our consciousness. This consciousness is mind-centered, and they know that we need to change as a human species or we're done for. And they feel like time is growing short, and we need to change our consciousness from our mind to our hearts. And yes, deal with the emergent issues of climate, but do not invest your spiritual, physical, emotional energies in reacting to this steamroller that is going down. They said that when we react, they ask the question, what are you choosing to focus on? Are you choosing to focus on the reaction to something, or are you choosing to focus on that which you want to see? And because they know that when we react to a problem, no matter what it is, socially, politically, economically, environmentally, that investing your spiritual and physical and emotional energies in that thing will add to the problems, and that nothing new is going to be created, even the most modern of technologies or the most pioneering thinking is still using the same consciousness. And Einstein said, and I'm paraphrasing, that you can't solve the problems with the same consciousness that's creating the problems. And we see this consciousness addressing climate crisis now. And for example, using hybrid cars, supposedly a good deal, right? Well, they said, well, what happens to that when we have these hybrid batteries, or batteries for the hybrid cars, it's filled with exotic minerals that have to be mined. And what happens when we finish the usefulness of the vehicle? Do we trash it? Do we recycle it like we do our computers, recycling the parts to poor countries? And the poor people in those countries like Thailand are taking apart these pieces to collect the precious mineral so that they can survive. And while they're doing that, they're poisoning themselves and the earth. That's just one example. I was asked once by Al Gore's team to be part of the team, and I said, sure, I'll be glad to do that if we can bring the indigenous voice. And they said, no, you've got to use Al Gore's PowerPoint. And we give him credit for raising awareness about climate change, but there's a subscript to the Inconvenient Truth, for example, the film that was made. And that subscript is, let's utilize modern technologies and change our light bulbs and various other things like that. And what it fails to do is bring the message that we have to simplify. You know, even the size of our average homes anywhere in the United States is like, well, Europe, for example, the average flat cost is about $800 a month, and or 800 square feet a month, rather, for a year. That's the average flat size. And here is, what, 2,000 feet? We have to simplify. And we can use these interim measures that are being applied today, like climate, wind power and solar power, but only as an interim measure. We cannot, the elders believe, use it as a final solution, because it's created by the same consciousness that created these problems. And what they do is exacerbate the issues, and including climate crisis. And that in the interim it could slow it down, but it's only an interim measure. We cannot gauge our success by the amount of wind power we have in the world, or solar power, etc. Because even to do the solar power, you have to use the state-of-the-art technologies, which costs a lot of money. That you have to dig into Mother Earth to do that. And we give a great deal of weight to quote-unquote sustainability. And the thing is, Native peoples around the world understand that these are terms that have now been co-opted by industry, yeah, but are used by environmental groups. That is a concept. It is not a way of life. That we have to switch to a way of life where sustainability isn't even a word, because we live it every day. And many indigenous peoples know this. And it's using the same consciousness that created the problems in the first place. we have to go to the heart. We have to stop thinking. We're not going to think ourselves out of this. Rational actions is not going to work. That the only thing that's going to work is to drop into our hearts. And they understand that our hearts tell us what we need to do. Each of us has a different calling. But whatever that calling is, when we're in our hearts, we are doing that which we must do. And this is what they're saying, that we've got to go there or we're done for. And to do that will require courage, because stopping the existing paradigms. You know, the Yupik elders here call this the reverse society, or the inside-out society, because we reversed all the laws for living. And one of those reversals, the most significant one, in their opinion, is the shift from the heart to the mind, where the mind is now telling the heart what to do, instead of the way that we do it, which is the heart telling the mind what to do, and the mind figures out how to do it. That is a function of the mind. But now we rely on it for knowledge, and our societies value knowledge. But the elders understand that knowledge without wisdom is not only useless, but can be very dangerous. And in this case, we believe that it is. So I hope that you will take this message to heart and cogitate on it, and then we will have some hope for the future. Thank you.